Well, welcome everybody to another edition of Novarc's Fireside Chats. We are joined by a very special guest today, somebody so close to my heart. I guess we should introduce myself first. I am Chris Holt. I take care of the Midwest and the Northeast for all things Novarc related on the sales side. But again, this is not about me. This is about the truly honored guests that we have and one of my closest friends in the industry, from Cerris Systems, headquartered out of Kansas City, but Mark is in the Omaha location. Mr. Mark Janning, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris.
That's it? That's all you got for me? Is it thanks?
That's it. I just had to laugh because it was funny. Like, yeah.
You're like, that's a pretty good intro.
That was pretty.
That's off the cuff too. That's the kind of, that's what I bring to
all these cool things to say, and I was like, I can't even top what Chris said. I just had to sit here and feel like,
there you go.
Honored to be a guest with you, Chris.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Mark, you are the fabrication manager at Cerris Systems, the Omaha location. And I'll tell you what, I will let you kind of kick it off and introduce yourself and tell everybody of the world here your story and where you came from and how you got here.
Okay, name's Mark Janning. I am the fabrication shop manager here at Cerris. I am a 464 steam fitter by trade, and my whole journey into this trade started unexpectedly, I would say. I started out as a normal, dumb high school kid, and back when I was in high school, they only talked about going to college. So I didn't know anything about the trades. I didn't have any family in the trades. I knew nothing. So got into running around with a couple buddies. One guy's dad owned a welding shop, and he said, if you two idiots are going to be here all the time, you're going to work. So I started working in a welding shop, didn't think anything of it. Graduated from high school, went to college to play football. Found out quickly that if you don't go to class, they don't keep you at the said college. Therefore, I went back and re-entered the workforce. After re-entering the workforce, I was doing a few odd jobs, everything centered around welding. Partnered up with an older gentleman at a place that I was working at. He told me, he said, hey, kid, this job sucks. You got to get out of here. I told him, I said, I don't know where I'd go. I said, I just welding, doing what I'm normally doing. And he said, you got to get out of here. He said, you should go be a steam fitter. I said, I don't know what a steam fitter is. He said, well, look them up. I think they make good money. I looked up what being a steam fitter was, applied for the apprenticeship, and from there, it's pretty much history. I did a 5-year apprenticeship here in Omaha. Turned out from that apprenticeship, wound up at MMC Contractors, who was is what Cerris formerly was. Ran a few jobs there. Was at a big enzyme plant, an industrial plant up in Blair, Nebraska, and got the opportunity in 2013 to start running the fabrication shop on the piping side, and that's where this whole journey started.
I mean, that's a story that I'm sure a lot of people can relate to. You know, I find that most of the people I talk to sort of fall into the trades. You know, like you said, it wasn't maybe on your radar, but obviously you've turned it into an incredible career. And so you've been with MMC Cerris from the go. You're born and bred. Yep.
I turned out of the 5-year apprenticeship, and I've been here since 2011.
Man, so yeah, we're going on 15 years there.
15 years almost.
Congratulations. That's pretty good. It's amazing they've kept you around that long from what I know.
I can't believe it. Yeah. I mean, if they only knew, right?
Yeah, right. So let's talk about Cerris a little bit. So Cerris has got not only the Omaha, facility that you work at, but other facilities. Talk maybe a little bit about where you guys are, in the country, and what you would say your main specialty is. What are your focuses?
Okay, Cerris Systems is a branch off. Cerris is the parent company. We have Cerris Systems and Cerris Builders. Builders is a GC side of Cerris. So Cerris Systems, we are a full mechanical. We have companies in Kansas City's the main office, and then our Omaha office is where I'm at. We have Nashville, we have Vegas, we have Des Moines, we have Lincoln. So kind of all over the place. 4 of those have fabrication shops that we're a part of. I lost my light, which is awesome.
This is amazing. Keep it in. Keep it in,
Back
Pete.
up, Mike.
We're keeping it in. We're keeping it in. That's fantastic. Anyway, locations.
Locations. 4 of our locations have fabrication shops. We are a full mechanical. We do pipe fitting, plumbing, HVAC, service. Big specialties would be healthcare, mission critical, industrial, pharmaceutical, government, public works, entertainment.
We're not turning anything down at Cerris. We're taking it all. We're taking it all.
Taking it all. Global.
So on that topic of, some of those things, I think that at least in the area that I represent for Novarc, I think that data centers and, things of that nature have really been king in the last year and a half or so. They're sprouting up everywhere. It's obviously a big national movement for the United States, start adding a lot of data centers and going heavy into that. Is you grabbing your own share of the pie of that as well?
Yeah, Cerris Systems has been doing a lot in the mission critical world. We've been helping out do that for, I would say 6 years or so. We've been working on that. But yeah, it's a big piece. It's basically taking a building that would normally take 3 years to build and building it in a year. Mm-hmm. And I don't see an end to it right now.
I don't either. I think that people are continuing to, the growth that we see are people that are trying to get into that game or preparing to stay a major player in the data center world. Outside of that, looking maybe on the horizon a little bit, eventually the data center craze will start to slow down a little bit. But what are you and the team at Cerris looking at in the future as what maybe coming next as a big wave of production?
Well, we're all pretty much in agreement that the data centers aren't stopping.
Yeah.
So we're going to keep rolling on data centers as long as we can. Everything else, we're going to continue to do our hospital work. We're going to continue to work in schools. We're going to continue to work in those industrial plants where we've made forgot what I was going to say, Chris.
No, that's okay.
All good.
But data centers aren't stopping.
No, data centers aren't stopping. And I would say the next thing is we're all going to figure out where we're going to get enough power to power all these data centers. So down the line, I would say power is going to be the next big thing that we have to figure out how we're going to fabricate.
I would agree, and I think that nuclear power plants getting resurrected, new ones that have getting plans laid to go in. I think that I'm seeing that as well is going to be power generation for all of this is going to become critical, not even just in the data center world, but as infrastructure is needed for more and more things like electric vehicles, other things like the grids are not equipped for that kind of stuff. So I think having power and continuing to grow that piece of the industry, I think is also, that's coming next for sure.
Yeah. Personally, I mean, I don't know how they're going to do it, but I could see down the line that you order a chiller for a building and you're ordering a power supply to go along with it, and they both show up and they just become part of the equation.
Yeah, I think you're right. So, you mentioned that for these data centers in particular, like you said, it's a job that, years past might have taken 3 years, but the demand is to get things done, immediately. And obviously that's forcing, I think it's creating this waterfall effect where companies are taking bits and pieces of these projects, right? There's kind of food to go around because of the demand for speed, and you can only do so much, right? So you can only take on so much of that job. I'm finding that capacity is becoming king for our mechanical contractors and other stuff. Obviously, the ability to absorb more of those projects is going to affect your bottom line. Automation is creating a pathway to being able to do that. Is that something that you're seeing at Cerris as far as, your implementation of automation is grabbing more of that work that's available?
Yeah, I don't think that you can produce the amount of fabrication you need to produce if you don't bring automation into the fold. It's your fabrication shop is almost reliant on it. When you bring in your pipe profilers and you bring in your automated spool welding robots and things like that. There's no other way that we can keep up without those items. I mean, right now the biggest gamble is labor. There's not enough labor to go around. We're all looking for the same guys. We're all pulling out of the same pools. So how do we combat that? That's the
It's too good. We're leaving it in. It's too good.
So how do we combat that? We start to automate things.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about your shop in particular and what you have there. Talk to me about the things that you currently, like personnel, how many people you got, where you got them, and some of the tools that you've implemented to just, like you said, combat the demand.
So we hire out a local 464. That's our local steam fitters union in the pipe fabrication part of the shop. So those guys, we're all pulling them out of the same pool. If there's not enough guys, we're hiring travelers, looking around the country to try to find guys that have the skill set that we need. In the shop, it's a little bit more difficult because you do all your different welding processes, a lot of MIG, a lot of TIG, some stick welding. You find a lot of guys, our training doesn't involve the fabrication side of the world where you're doing a lot of heavy MIG welding and running it on a positioner. So to do that, we train the guys that we get that are dedicated and want to be in the shop, and those are the guys we keep in here. We don't take the guys out of the shop and send them to the field. We keep that same core group in here all the time. We keep a core group of about 15 guys, and then we'll add per what the job needs to accelerate the schedule if that's what we have to do. But 15 guys is probably our normal in the fab shop. Then we'll take it up from there if we have to, adding guys that aren't specifically in the weld stations all the time.
Mm-hmm. So, the labor, we call it a shortage, but just the difficulty in finding those guys. Like you said, everyone is pulling out of the same bucket, competing for guys. There's people that want to work in the shop. There's people that want to work in the field. It's tough to pull people. Obviously, that pointed you guys down the path of evaluating automation, right? So what were the first, you mentioned having a profiler and you mentioned having Novarc in there, but talk a little bit about that journey from inception of where the company realized this is a direction that we need to go and we need to start evaluating this for our shop.
Yeah, I think it had to be a long time ago when
it was definitely a few years. I mean, you guys were definitely, at least for me, as a sales guy, I spent a king's ransom on dinners. But it was a long and really thoughtful evaluation, right? Like it was thoughtful from the very beginning.
Yeah.
And to be fair, you guys were very upfront with your timelines and how long that was going to take to vet through that, and just knowing how long it took you to get through finally to the finish line with your profiler. So the case was already laid that this was going to be a pretty lengthy investigation. But like you said, walk us through from the beginning where that started and where it ultimately ended up.
Yeah, so 2020, we moved into the new fabrication shop we're in right now. Building came up right next to our main office. It's one of those too good to be true things. We were able to buy that building, build it into the fab shop we needed. First thing we needed to add was a big pipe profiler. Mm-hmm. So went down the rabbit hole of all the different ones we could look at. Kansas City has been running a certain one forever. We were kind of going down that rabbit hole with Kansas City on standardizing and staying with the same type of equipment. And then we had another builder, HG. They wanted to sit down with us and they wanted to build the machine we wanted. So we were able to sit down, design the machine we wanted, which is the PC900RB. That machine came in and changed the way that we were able to fabricate. So we had a primitive machine before. We would have to run 26 to 30 guys in the shop to keep up with cutting and keep up with getting that to our welders, keeping the shop efficient. That cut all those guys out of there to get us back down to our 15 number that we run now currently. I would still say that having that piece of equipment is the heartbeat of the shop, because if that breaks down, then your flow through the shop just is completely stopped from it at the very beginning. So we brought that piece of equipment in, and like I said, it changed everything. So now from there, what do? You outfit all your stations, you get as many stations as you can, you outfit all of them the same. We put Team Industries positioners in every station. They're very versatile. My thing with the shop is making sure that everything is versatile, everything can change. So you set your weld stations up, get everything set in, positioners for your guys, Pipeworks 400s for all your guys, very versatile machine. What can you do to increase your production still? So that's where we run into the problem. The next step, we look into, okay, can we automate welding? Deep rabbit hole, send a couple of guys that you trust, send them to FabTech, have them start looking at different welding, different robots, different items, different things that would increase production. And we land on Novarc. So Novarc came to the table, and we strung Chris out for about 47 years.
No, it was true. It was a pleasure. No, it was a pleasure. No, you guys did take a long time for real though. I just think of all the money we could have made for you in that amount of time, So there you go. But no, yeah. So okay, so you land on Novarc now. Novarc, is now something that's going to be coming into the shop. Talk to me about maybe the sentiment around the guys on the floor, because this is for a lot of companies who are looking to dip their toe into automation or even go, full regalia into the automation world. It's become a big part of my process to make sure that the guys on the floor are involved in that decision. They're going to be the ones who are going to be ultimately using it at the end of the day. So getting their positive buy-in and excitement for something like that coming to the shop is very important to me. So talk to me a little bit about what was the overall sentiment of the guys when something like this is announced that it's going to be coming in. I know, like you said, you had some of the people involved in that decision who are going to be really targeted as users of the machine. But, talk to me about the guys on the floor and sort of their reception.
Yeah, the guys on the floor are the biggest part. That was my huge concern coming in. I figured whatever piece of equipment we got, it didn't matter what brand it was, bring any piece of equipment in, and you go tell those guys that this robot's going to be making their welds, and every one of them is going to be upset. Anybody I've talked to across the country, it's been one of the first things that's brought up. So when it came back to me and we started talking about, hey, we're looking at this Novarc machine after we got back from FabTech, my first thought is, what are the guys going to say? What are they going to do? How are you going to deal with that? So go down there, talk to the guys. I'm very transparent. I just told all the guys, I'm like, hey, this is something we're looking at. What are you guys' feelings? Because if every single guy in that shop was going to drag up and leave, it makes that decision a little bit harder, because it took a long time to build the right team in the shop and put the right pieces in the right place. So you start talking to those guys and you get their feelings. You're telling me this robot's going to come in on day one and it's going to weld better than I have, and I've been practicing, I've been honing my skills for 20 years. You're telling me this thing's going to be better than me. And I tried to do the best that I could to let the guys understand that it wasn't taking their work. It was another tool in the shop. The nice thing about the Novarc, and I know it has the AI Novi capability, we don't have that set up. And I talked to Chris, I talked to you early when we started about it. I don't want that to be something that we're doing. I want the guys to be interactive with the machine. And telling the guys that it was another piece of equipment, that it was interactive, that they were actually standing there and the machine's making the weld, but they can make it do what they want it to do. That was a big piece in selling that to the guys. Whether they believe me or not, I don't know. I still think in the beginning they thought this machine's going to come in and make every single weld, and we're all just sitting here doing nothing. But in the end, that machine is really good at what it does. It makes really good roll welds. And we still need guys to do other things. We still need OLEDs to be welded. We still need saddles to be welded. We still need all the technical things that still need to happen. But what it does well, and those guys can't deny it. So I'm hoping that they still believe me. And we're about 2 years into this now. Welding will make an old man out of you really fast. It'll beat you up. The same weld you make at 8 a.m. in the morning is not the same weld you make at 2 in the afternoon. I've been there, I've done it. And I still to this day say that Peg's never tired. She never comes in hungover. She never comes in after she got yelled at or was in an argument with her husband at home. So, she's going to make the same weld at 7 o'clock that she makes at 7 in the morning or 7 p.m. or whatever time she does it.
Yeah. And for those watching, Peg is the affectionate name that they have given the Novarc SWR down in the shop. It's actually becoming very popular that people are naming their robots now. It's fun to see. There's a few of them that are out there I think there's a Spark. I think there's a couple of them out there that are pretty cool. But you're absolutely right in that, and I lean on this hard, and it's why it's important to get, somebody from the welding team, maybe to Houston to see it live or to another shop that has it running live, because you really do get to put it in your hands and you understand that this isn't a microwave, right? This isn't we set it up and it's like beep and you just space off. So it is a thing that it has the ability to be flexible. As a welder, you are still using your skills that you have developed. And as much as Novarc will give you a baseline of how you can perform all of the welds that it can perform, those can all be tweaked and adjusted to how that particular welder wants to do it. And they've got all the controls at their hands to do with the machine what they would have done with their own body. So it is definitely, you're just like, stick welding ultimately went to MIG welding, and that was a new advancement in technology to be able to do that. This is the next thing. This is just the next tool that it's going to allow you to, put out 300, 400 inches, in a day instead of grinding your way to 100. It's just giving you a machine gun to do it with. But it is still a welder at the end of it. I always make the comparison that this is the Novarc SWR is like a doctor doing a surgery with a robot. There's still a doctor at the end of that. There's still someone using their skills and education. They're just using a little more efficient tool in order to do it. Right. So that's how I like to describe it. And I think it's a pretty accurate way of how it actually is for the welders when it ultimately gets in the shop. So how do the guys like it now? I mean, they're out there using it every day, Justin and those guys. So talk to me maybe about how they feel about it now. Maybe some things they've come to you and said, hey, this is something that's pretty cool.
Yeah. They are constantly looking for ways to use it. Some of the jobs we have, we'll evaluate it. We'll look at it. We'll say, okay, this job is predominantly 3-inch. Might make more sense to just send that over to the guys and have the guys welding it. And then we have a job that we're welding 18-inch, 14-inch, 20-inch, and the guys know for a fact that they're planning on running that through the machine. So Peg gets all those bigger welds, and anything, honestly, we sit down, we evaluate it, and that's how we figure out, is this a beneficial job to run through? Because sometimes if there's going to be a bunch of fit outs on there, it might be easier for the guys to just take care of that in their weld station.
Yep.
But I like the fact that right now the guys evaluate it. They're looking at it. I don't have to beg and ask them if they're going to look, are you running that through the robot? What's your plan? So that piece is nice. The other piece of that is nice is that they took the welder and they started trying to figure out ways to make it more efficient, right?
Right. So, right away, right out of the gate.
Right out of the gate.
Let's push this thing. Can you say, sorry for the language, people.
Right out of the gates. Out of the gates.
I think we can push it.
We did a lot of welds coming right out of the gate, and we sent them off to X-ray because Novarc claims 99% of those welds will shoot X-ray. Well, everybody's always a little skeptical. So I told the guys, I said, hey, let's make some welds, shoot some X-rays. So they shot the X-rays, they came back, and I was shooting them to B31-1, and almost all of them, but 4, passed at B31-1.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, okay, do they pass it? What our weld spec is for the job? And they said, yeah, they would. These were just test welds, so it didn't matter. But the guys said, oh, which welds were they? And they told me, oh, well, there was 4 welds where we tried to make the machine go a little bit faster than what it normally goes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think those were the welds. We just won't do that anymore. I said, you're already welding. I said, you're already welding 14-inch pipe in 16 minutes. I said, I think we're going fast enough. We don't need to try to cut any corners. But knowing the guys are looking at it like another tool, like how can we make it go faster? How can we soup up our hot rod a little bit better than it was? So I do think they've taken to it in that aspect.
Yeah, and that's something that happens pretty much everywhere. It does become competitive with, especially once you start seeing more Novarcs within your area. The operators that are running those, you'll see them at a convention or you'll see them at FabTech, and they're like, "Hey, how fast are they running this one over there? Like, what do they got going on?" It does become like a competitive. Welders are pretty inherently competitive, I think, as far as the skill. Let's move into maybe some of the benefits that Cerris has seen from the implementation of these things, whether that's come from safety, whether that's come from competitiveness in the market. How has implementing automation moved the way that you guys operate maybe as a business, whether it's going after more work? What are some changes that you've maybe noticed at Cerris since you've done this?
I definitely noticed that it gives you a little bit more capacity. Right off the bat, that if we're working on a project and we're set up and we're doing system with 14-inch welds on it, right off the bat, okay, we're cutting it efficiently off the machine. It comes up almost clean off a pipe profiler. Once it's going down the line, the first stop it runs into is running into Peg. Peg can make as many welds as she can to get the guys ahead. And once you do that, it does give you a little bit more capacity on what you can run through the shop. So that's been the biggest thing for us is being able to know, okay, we can control a little bit more of our schedule that we were already really good at controlling just being in the fab shop. Now we can control that I know that these welds we can do in a lot shorter amount of time than if we were going to hand weld these. So the biggest thing so far has been the ability to control the schedule and know, okay, we can rely on Peg to do X, Y, or Z in a faster time.
So Novarc is now in the shop, and I think when that I have new customers that ask me, well, how do shops do this? Do we have obviously when we come in, we train 3 operators to run the machine. Now, how teams and companies are utilizing those people is always very different. We've got some that have a rotating carousel of operators that go through, and some that really dedicate that machine to one, like a 1A, maybe a 1B if 1A is on vacation type situation. But if it's there and Mark's my guy, it's his baby. Like how have you guys landed on that as far as utilizing the personnel with Novarc at Cerris?
So big piece of the puzzle when it came in, somebody needed to own it. Somebody needed to be the champion, and it being me is not the right person. I run the shop. I'm drug into a bunch of different things. I'm not the guy out on the production floor. So one of our main foremen out on the shop floor, great welder. The guys all look up to him. He said, I'll take ownership of that machine. I'll be the champion. And if there's an issue with it, everybody goes to Josh. Now, we have worked on getting every single one of our welders that's in the shop access to a running Peg. So we've trained every welder in the shop on there, and we kind of make it a thing that it rotates through the shop. So maybe one day one of our welder A is working on the machine and welder B is tacking everything up that he needs And then the next day he's welding on the machine. So we don't have one dedicated guy that runs it, but we do have a dedicated guy that owns it.
Yeah. Okay.
So the guy that owns it takes ownership, and they know that I'm going to ask if we're running something on the machine, but
Right.
I know that with having somebody take ownership of it, they're gonna look for those opportunities to put it on there. And we've done it. Like I said, training people on the machine. We've had 3 people trained from Novarc at our first day, and then the champion of that machine, Josh, he's trained everybody else on that machine. And we have 5th-year apprentice running it right now, and he runs that machine. He's been running it every day that it's been doing something. So it's been easy to work on, easy to train, and that's been a big piece of the puzzle in the shop of it being successful for us.
So that's an interesting way to put that, right? It's not necessarily a dedicated user of the machine, but it's a dedicated owner of somebody. When Mark comes out there and says, "What's going on with Nova?" You know where you're going, right? You know the guy you're going to. He's deciding who's going to be running it that day. Is he out there doing that?
Yeah, probably for the most part, they're talking through who's going to run it. Right now, the way that we're set up, we're really busy right now. So with that extra busyness, I should say, we can jump to, okay, now we have an apprentice that wants to learn, that wants to do this thing, and he can take whatever comes to him and he's welding it. So,
yeah.
I was going to say again.
Well, let's move forward now to, you have Novarc in there. You're an experienced Novarc user. You know how installation went. You know how training goes. Let's say Novarc number 2 is on the horizon. What would be maybe some things that you learned from this first experience with it that maybe you didn't expect to learn, or some things you might have done a little differently, or what would be maybe some advice you'd give to somebody looking to implement their first one, now or in the coming months?
Yeah. So when we were putting this in the shop, I had this sweet idea. I thought, okay, talk to Chris, figured out how we were going to lay things out. Big thing number 1 is, where can it live? It takes up a big footprint if you do it the way we did it. Now, it can take up whatever footprint you want. I love the having the 15-foot radius, having the ability to hit multiple different positioners that are set up in configurations that you want to use that are efficient for your shop. That's ultimately goal number 1. Like, where can it live and how are you going to set it up? So my ultimate plan is that we weren't going to take away from the weld stations. We don't run a tack-up station. Every welder takes his assemblies that come from the guys that do all the cleaning, set aside on carts. We take those assemblies. The welder takes them. They'll fit them up. They'll weld them. That piece will be complete. My plan was that we would do the same thing with peg. We would set things up in the positioner, and as positioner A was welding, positioner B had a fitter fitting up the pieces that needed to be done. And then once positioner A was done, we could rotate peg over to positioner B, and she's welding right there. And this idea lasted about a day.
I was gonna say, I don't know where you're going with this, but this is not what you guys are doing. But I digress. Go ahead. That lasted a whole day.
So I found out that I'm pretty sure if we'd have kept with this pace, that the fitter, who's also a welder, would have quit. Because it's not possible to fit up or to take a piece out of the machine, take a piece out of the positioner, bring in a new piece, fit up a new piece, have it ready and prepped to go by the time that peg is done welding on the other positioner. So let's take, I've been using 14 inch as an example. 14 inch, it's going to be about 15, 16 minutes for her to make that weld. That is not enough time. So during that day 1, maybe day 2, it might have went over 2 days, but those fitters were literally running around trying to stay ahead of how fast that machine works. So as efficient as it is, you have to think about, okay, now I can't, personally for us, I can't do this sweet idea that I thought I was going to have,
Right.
where we had two guys working on the station, one guy welding, one guy fitting, everything worked out. Now what do we do? So now we have to come up with how can we keep it fed? Because it's so efficient that you can't just go weld by weld. You have to have things fit up and ready to go ahead of it. And if you don't, there's going to be so much downtime with the machine that it just kills you. So now we set up and there's multiple different things we do. Sometimes we have a tack up station and we can tack up ahead and get ahead as much as we can and set stuff off to the side. Sometimes there's space constraints where we don't have that with as much stuff as running through the shop. And the welder that's going to be on the machine will take that over to his station and fit everything up. And that way it can go from one weld station right onto the machine. So a couple different ways to do it, but a big piece of the puzzle is, where's it going to live? 2, where are you going to tack up and how are you going to keep it fed? Because if it's sitting there not welding, it's not making you any money. It's not doing anything that it needs to be doing.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. And I think that's something that everybody learns. I now being in this industry for a few years, you can try to get ahead of all that and really advise people on the companies in particular. Like you said, you were one that was set up in a fashion where your welders were owning the whole piece, right? They're taking it off cutting, they're doing their own fitting, their own welding, everything. It's all done in that one area. There's other shops where that transition's a little easier, where they are set up to having dedicated fitters and dedicated welders, where Novarc coming in lends itself to that flow. So you guys actually had to make that transition from what I call kind of an individual sport, where you're just doing it all on your own, to a team sport where someone's handing you a piece that's already been fit, and they're doing that. So yeah, fitting on the front end, it's really the only way to keep it fed, right? If, like you said, if you're trying to fit at Novarc, you're losing money. Your operator's going to be waiting because it's just too fast to be able to do that.
Yeah, it's too efficient. You can't do it that way. And
We've seen companies fit for an entire shift, and not like they might be running 2 shifts. So during the daytime, everyone's just fitting and building a mountain for Novarc to come in at night and just pound it all out. And the next day it's all gone.
Yeah. And that's something too, that it gives you that thought process of, okay, we have so much stuff ahead of us. We have to work 2 shifts. How are we going to work 2 shifts? Because we've built the crew we needed here in the shop, and we don't have another crew sitting on standby that could just come in and replace that crew. But it does give you the ability to where you have guys that have been trained on the welder, and you can have, everything tacked up ahead of time, and then bring in a crew that you have a couple guys working on, and you could efficiently, if everything was tacked up, you could efficiently weld while a guy changes out onto the next position or the next piece. And Novarc, Peg, whatever you want to call her, she could run all night and without an issue.
Yeah, for sure. Well, last question I got, we've got Novarc in there at Cerris right now, brushing out the MIG welds, doing the roll welding. You've got a magic wand in your hand and you get to wave it at Novarc's innovation team as to what some things that you would love to see Novarc come out with next that would really make Cerris, an excited company to continue growing with us. What are some of those things that you hope the future holds coming out of Novarc?
The ability to switch from MIG welding to TIG welding on the same unit.
Don't be surprised if you see some of that here released in the near future. And hopefully we can make your little magic wand dreams come true, Mark. It's all I wake up in the morning wanting to do. It's just like, how can I make Mark Janning a happy guy today? Not only because you're in my hometown of Omaha, but, we want to make sure everybody is successful. So, final thoughts, advice for anybody looking to get into automation?
Don't let it scare you. Let that be something that you look at. Do all your homework, do all your research, see what machine fits best for you, Cerris is big on looking for companies that are forward thinking and willing to go out and always come up with that next best idea. And that's why when we look for places to pair with, that's why we landed on who we landed on with the pipe profiler. That's why we landed on Novarc, and they continue to push the envelope forward and come up with new ideas. And I think that is
perfect timing to cut it. Mark Janning from Cerris Systems here in Omaha. Anybody, you'll see him at all, you see him at trade shows and stuff. Mark has been always willing and a great partner for Novarc. So don't be surprised if you're looking to come and see a Novarc. If I recommend coming to see Mark at Cerris, they've been great. Competition pending. But again, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your thoughts and your insight on all this stuff, and maybe we'll do it again sometime. But we appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Chris.
No problem. That's Novarc's Fireside Chat 2025, November. Hopefully everybody's coming into a big end of the year, and we'll see you soon. Thanks again, Mark. We're signing off. We'll see you.